Okay, hello everyone. My name is Dan, and also my name is Farmer Dan with the Salad Garden. And today I'm going to try to instruct you all a little bit and give you some ideas on what it's like to make fermented foods. I know a lot of interest these days on making different kinds of ferments. And one of the easiest things to do is to make something like sauerkraut or kimchi. The basics are real important to understand. There's not a whole lot of basics to it, but you do need to really adhere to the basic principles if you really want to turn out something that is very good for your family. So a little bit of history. I've been fermenting sauerkraut, first of all, since about 2013. Then I moved into a little kimchi. Then I moved into some kosher dill pickles. And I did this with the intent of selling at the Columbia Farmers Market and some of our local health food stores. And I do grow most of my product, but not all of my product on my farm, the Salad Garden down in Ashland. It's sometimes difficult to secure everything you need just growing locally. I can do cabbage, I can do Napa cabbage, I can do daikon, I can do garlic. So these are some of the things that I use in the ferments. I could use beets, I use that in my sauerkraut. The thing about fermenting, just about any vegetable that you can grow in your garden, you can ferment it. And it's really nice sometimes to mix them together. And today we're going to cover kimchi, which really is a product that has a lot of different things to it, or a fair amount of things to it, more so than maybe straight up sauerkraut that just simply has salt. So we're going to talk about kimchi today, and we'll give a demonstration. And you're catching me today and my team as we're down here at the Hartsburg Grand in Hartsburg, Missouri, where we have, when I say we, where the Missouri Organic Association has this wonderful building that has an inspected kitchen. So I'm able to make my product down here and sell it commercially. And so my team back here, we've been working, and you're gonna see them in the background working a little bit yet. We've been making bigger batches. So we're going through today, we're making about 200 pounds of kimchi. But what I'm doing here is going to take a little time out and also show you all how you can make a small batch just for your kitchen. And you'll end up with maybe a quart or 2 jars that you can, I'll show you how to do it, we'll do it here. You can pack it down real good, you can put it on your kitchen counter, and you can let it ferment. A couple details about kimchi as it's different than sauerkraut. Our sauerkraut, we let it ferment for 4 weeks at about 68 to 72 degrees. And that's very important that these ferments, at least for vegetables, fall within that range. If it gets too warm, then the bacteria and the microbes go too crazy, and you can get like a soft kraut or a soft kimchi. If it's too cold, it's a real slow process to make it work. There's a difference between, though, the sauerkraut and the kimchi. Sauerkraut, you want it to be sour. To get it sour, you have to allow it to go at least 3 weeks. We do it 4. All the wonderful microbes really begin to build over that time because they kind of take turns each week. Different microbes develop and grow and multiply. And so after 4 weeks, pretty much the research says they're kind of finished. They're finished kind of multiplying, you're not going to get any more. So after 4 weeks, we pull it, and we jar it up in our jars, and then we don't heat it at all. We close it, put it in the refrigerator, and store it, okay? Now with kimchi, there's a little difference. My very good friend, Sim Hildebrand, who was a vendor at the farmer's market for years, and she was my next door partner. She used to make some kimchi, kind of off to the side, kind of bootleg. It was cute. She couldn't sell it at the market, but if you knew her, you can get a hold of it off the back seat of her car. So she used to make it, and she's the one who really turned me on to it. And I began to buy her stuff and taste it. I really liked it. And so then it got to a point where I said, you know, Sim, why don't you make this and sell this? She said, oh, it's just too much trouble. We have to go through all the hassle of all the paperwork and the regulations and the food safety and all of this. And I said, okay. I said, but you know, I think I'm gonna start to make it. And somewhere along the line, as I was starting to make it, I said, Sim, I'm thinking maybe I should let it ferment a little longer. And she goes, oh, Dan, kimchi, no sour. So what happens, kimchi ferments for 7 days at 68 to 72. If you take it longer, then it begins to get sour, like sauerkraut. But if you've ever had kimchi yourself, the Korean ferment, you know it's not a sour thing. It's more of a spicy thing. Okay, so that's kind of a difference there that probably even affects other ferments that you might be interested in. Requires different times to get what the finished product is that you want. So just keep that in mind. If you're also going to do sauerkraut, you're going to do it longer. You're going to ferment longer. Kimchi, 7 days is really the max I take it. Then I pull it. Okay? All right, so we're going to focus on kimchi today because we're in the middle of making it. You see back here, we've got the Napa cabbage, and here's what I put into my kimchi. Majority Napa cabbage, second daikon radish, third carrots, fourth is salt, then ginger, garlic, some scallions, or you can even stick some other greens in there if you want to, like turnip greens or something like that if you want to. You can get creative. And then I do Korean red pepper flakes. And I'm going to be real specific on this. This is critical. You want to get Korean red pepper flakes coarse ground, coarse, not fine, right? And you can find these at some of the Asian stores in town. Sometimes the distributors, you know, lose their account or something, and you can't get this anymore, so then you got to go to another one. I couldn't get this just the other day when I needed more. I had to go to another Asian store, and then I got this brand, okay? But it's basically the same. Coarse grade Korean red pepper flakes, okay? So that's critical, because that really brings out the taste. Now, in Korea, and if you buy kimchi at the store that's made by Koreans, you're going to find that there may be fish sauce in it, there may be anchovies in it, and when you open it up, it's like, woo, that's got a real nose to it, doesn't it? And what I have found that the American culture, our taste buds don't go for that very much. And so I don't use any of that. So my product is really a vegan. You know, it's got vegetables and salt, and that's really it. It doesn't have anything else in it, you know, that is animal or something like that. Okay, so if we're ready, I'm going to start, first of all, with a nice head of Napa cabbage, okay? And many of you probably already know that Napa is actually pretty easy to grow in your own garden. I suggest that you don't shoot for the middle of the summer, though, to grow it. You start in the spring, you have a spring crop, and then you do a fall crop. And you'll get, it especially likes the fall. It really likes fall, okay? And the same way is kind of with the daikon radish. You can grow your own daikon radish. Unfortunately, I think we cut up every one of our daikons here today, otherwise I would have showed you. But when you go to, if you're ordering seeds from the seed catalog, and let's say Johnny's Selected Seed, I get a lot of my seed from them. If you go back to daikon, there's different kinds of daikon. Look for the one called Alpine. Alpine is a daikon, and it says it in the narrative under the seed in Johnny's. Very good for making kimchi. And so that's what you want. And if you go into the local stores, you'll see, Asian stores anyway, you'll see some daikons that are kind of blocky, like this, and some that are real long. Don't get the long one, get the sharp, stubby, blocky one. That's the one that's really good for kimchi. Okay? The other one's much better for cooking. And again, some of my Korean and Chinese friends that own some of the Asian stores, they inform me of this. So, oh no, you don't want that one, you want this one. So there's a wealth of information out there, and I just really love the way we kind of put things together. We teach each other and help each other, okay? All right, so got my head here, and first of all, I'm just going to cut it in half. If it's got outer leaves that don't look so good, you take those off. You get down to the really good part. You notice that when you open it up, you got a big base here, sort of a hard stem. We will cut that out in just a little bit. But first of all, I cut it in half, but then I cut it again in half. And then I can really easily get in there and just snip off that core. And Ben, can I have a scale? Can you give me the scale? Thank you. Because we will do some weighing here in just a little bit. This is a nice solid head. Okay, and you know, sometimes these Napa heads get huge, okay? And so you have to approach it a little bit differently. But I'm going to keep on cutting until we get to the size that I want. So sometimes, like right now, I quartered them, but then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to cut through this again. And the reason is that now I'm going to start to cut crosswise about every maybe 2 fingers, the most. Okay? Just going to cut straight through. Okay? And so now what I have is pieces this size. Okay? And of course you can make them bigger or smaller, but I like this size because it's easy to eat it with a fork or with chopsticks. You know, it's easy to get a hold of it. And so this is the size that you're shooting for. Okay? And now I am, I'll be right back. Okay, our kitchen right here, very handy. I want to weigh things here a little bit. Because what I'm shooting for here is 4 pounds, and we'll slowly talk about the recipe here, the quantity. But we're looking for 4 pounds of Napa after I've trimmed and everything. Let's see what we get here. That's 13 ounces. So I got a little bit of something there. It doesn't look quite right, so I discard that. There is 1 pound of 10 ounces. Over 2 pounds. I think just one head will give us what we're looking for, which is 4 pounds. Yeah, okay, we're perfect. How about that? Didn't even rehearse that, but it came out good. Okay, so I've got 4 pounds of Napa cabbage in my container over here, okay? Now I'm going to, and I got it back over here, I'm going to weigh out, actually it's already weighed out for me. This is daikon, and you can see that we have a machine that juliennes it. See how it is, the size of it? It's not grated. You really don't want grating. You want it more solid like this. So that's julienne. Now you can, on a small batch, you can do this yourself at home, because what I've got in here is 1/2 pound of daikon. So 4 pounds of Napa, 1/2 pound of daikon julienne, and I'm going to sprinkle that in there. It goes in. And then here's my carrots. I julienne the carrots also. Okay? And they're going in, but there's only 1/4 pound of this. Again, though, you can add more or less, just depending on what you want to stick in there. This is just kind of my basic recipe. So you can add more Napa, more carrot, less carrot, whatever. Whatever you throw in there will work for you. Okay, so we got that. And now I've got here I'm real close to 5 pounds there, 4 3/4 pounds. For that amount, you need about 2.5 tablespoons of salt. Okay? And if you were doing sauerkraut, it'd be about the same thing. If you had 5 pounds of shredded cabbage, you'd put 2.5, maybe 3, between 2 and 3 tablespoons in. It's not totally critical, but it is important. So I got that measured. You sprinkle that around in there. Okay. Now, my ginger. Love the ginger. So this is ginger, and then for this amount, I put pretty much a heaping teaspoon in. 1 teaspoon of that. And I put wonderful garlic in. 1 tablespoon of garlic. More garlic than ginger. That goes in too. Here's some of my scallions that I've cut up, and I will put like a handful to sprinkle that in. And here's my Korean red pepper flakes. And I put, again, this is to your taste. I've experimented through the years, and for what I like and for what my customers like, I put 3 heaping tablespoons in. And that maybe ends up with being maybe a heat on your finished product, maybe a 3 on a 10 scale. So it's pretty easy to have. Okay, so now I'm going to move some things around. And what you can do here, you can see what we got, okay? And you can do this in your kitchen sink, because you want something, because now you're going to get your hands in there. You're going to get your hands in, and you're going to really mix it up. But also, you want to kind of knead it, squeeze it, make the cells of the cabbage and everything kind of break down, so the salt can enter it. Because what you're wanting eventually, and it will happen maybe by overnight for sure, the salt is going to pull out a lot of the liquid, a lot of the water, you might say, from both the daikon and the Napa cabbage. And that is critical. We got to have that, because when you're fermenting sauerkraut and kimchee or dill pickles or whatever, if you're fermenting it, it's got to be an anaerobic process, which means it has to be away from open air. It's got to be under the water, under the brine. And so what we need is to bring out this liquid. Sometimes usually on Napa, there's a lot of liquid that will eventually come out, which is very good, by the way. When you get to the end, and you're packing up your kimchi after 7 days, you have a lot of liquid on the top. Sort of, take that off, put it in a jar, and now you have a wonderful drink. All right, it's very good. It's full of microbes, very tasty, just to drink straight up. A lot of people at the market, when we didn't have the COVID, we would have shots of kimchi juice, and people really like that. Okay, so I've done this, really kneaded it. You hear it crunching, and it's getting wetter and wetter just as I'm doing this myself. Okay, so now we've mixed it, and now, if you're at home and you want to proceed, and you can cut whatever I told you there about the ingredients, you can cut it in half. This is what, we made this because this is what I use here before we put it in our big buckets. But it mixed together here, and the next stage here is then, we're going to put it in a clean, wide mouth quart jar. Because this is how you're going to learn how to do it at home, where you could see it. It's going to be right on your kitchen counter. Now back at the ranch, I have a little tool that would go right in a quart jar, just kind of stamp it all down, because you want to get the air out, both of sauerkraut and kimchi. When you put it in your container, you want to push down really hard to collapse all those air spaces in there, because oxygen is, you might say, the enemy. You don't want that, so you got to push down really hard, like I'm doing. And if you have a tool to do that, so be it. Okay, getting close. Usually after I do this for a demonstration like this, if after I do this and then we continue on with questions and answers for another 15 minutes or something, then we turn back and look at this, we go, oh, the fluid's coming up. It really is pretty much that quick. Okay, so what I've got there is a jar full. I'm going to run it back, just wash my hands for a second. Okay, so I put it up there really pretty darn high, but I don't necessarily want to bring it all the way up, so I don't want it to touch the lid of the jar that I'm going to just put on now. So what I do next, and some people do a little bit different things. Some people, when they make sauerkraut at their kitchen and they're just doing a quart jar at a time, they'll take an apple or a pear, and they'll put that on top, and then they'll take this lid and put it on and push it down real hard, and so that kind of acts like a little plate, and it's pushing all the solid stuff down far, so when the liquid comes up, it covers everything. But I have pretty much found that if you pack this really tight at first, bring it up there real close, put your lid on, that it will start to juice up pretty quickly and the fluid will rise. And probably, I'm going to say in 4 hours, I'll have liquid way to the top. All right? Now, so what you're going to do then, fermentation gives off gas, bubbles, okay? And if you tighten that real tight, it'll start to bubble up, and it may put a bulge in the top of your lid here. So here's what I do. I loosen it just enough so that if it gets some pressure, it's going to out. The gas is going to come out, okay? And I'll do that for a couple days because it will build up. But every time, what you can do is every time you sort of what I call burp it, you bring it back, and maybe it captures some of that gas. But then the next morning or whatever, you look at it. If this is bulging, you just undo a little bit, and it belches out, okay? And so what it's doing is getting rid of the gas, but it's also not letting any more air come in if you're really quick with the turning on, turning off, turning back on. Put this somewhere where it's not in the sunlight. It's not that sunlight is bad for it, it's just that if sunlight hits this jar, it's going to heat up, okay? It's a collector. It may, if your house is 72 and you've got sun on it, it's going to go to 80 here. And it doesn't like that. It doesn't like, and then in the night it would go back down. It doesn't want, so put it somewhere on the counter where it never gets sunlight, okay? And for 7 days, you're going to watch this ferment. You really ought to put a lid underneath it or a plate underneath it, because if it does juice out and come down the sides, you'll catch it down there on your plate. So then after 7 days, you're probably going to have some pretty nice kimchi. And then you take it, stick it in the refrigerator, because you want to stop the fermentation. You don't want it to go on any further. And it'll hold in the refrigerator for months, actually. Okay? But if you put it on the kitchen table and you forget about it for 5 or 6 hours, it's going to start fermenting again. Not that that'll kill you, it won't do that, but it will probably soften your kimchi, which you won't like if you didn't put it back in the refrigerator. It'll start a process which kind of funky in a way. All right? So, now I've got a whole lot more kimchi left here. And after we finish this demonstration here, this will all go back into my regular bigger buckets, for fermentation for the week. But this is so easy to do at home. And sauerkraut is really not much different, except let's say you're just using straight up sauerkraut, cabbage. You slice it. You put 5 pounds in, and you put 2.5 tablespoons of salt in, and you mix it up. And then you put it in this jar the same way, but then you let it ferment for 3 or 4 weeks. You're going to come up with a good ferment there too. Okay? This is the way to start, and the reason is that if you've never done it before, you may make some mistakes. You may forget about it. You may forget to burp it. You may not have put it down tight enough in there. And so it may turn out, you might go, oh, that's not very good. Well, then, yeah, come to the farmer's market and talk to me. Okay? Well, because usually the first time I did it, it was a mess. I blew it. Okay? So you have to have some mistakes, and that's how you're going to learn. If you start with a small amount, that's a lot better. My first batch years ago, I started with a 5-gallon bucket. Well, I threw the whole bucket out because it was a big mistake. All right. So start small and read. There's a lot of good books out there on fermentation, of vegetable fermentation, other ferments these days. So all these little things will help you kind of build your skills and your knowledge and your understanding of it all. And it's really a great thing to do, especially in these times. This, you can keep this in the cellar too, just like my grandparents and your great-grandparents used to do probably. They would make big batches. Like, I've seen barrels in Herman, where I grew up, at the winery. I guess they were doing wine and probably sauerkraut. 50-gallon crocks, okay? Those crocks were in the basement, and they never left the basement, okay, in the lifetime of those farmers. And what they would do, in Herman, they said, for every family member, you had to grow 100 heads of cabbage, okay? Because it all went to sauerkraut. And it was all done down in the cellar at the end of the summer, in the fall, okay? And it was salted and everything, and lid on it and stuff. And then each week, probably 3 or 4 times a week, they went down and took it off the top. Okay, kept eating it and eating it. And it's stored at 55 degrees all year long, or for the entire winter and probably well into the summer. And this was their vitamin C, because they didn't have oranges at the grocery store in 1850. You know, so this is how you got your vitamin C. And this is what the sailors did too when they came across. You know, they had sauerkraut. They didn't have lemons. They had sauerkraut. You know, and that's what got them across the sea, because that's where the vitamin C was. So it's a real lifesaver, you know, these days in many ways. And you get good variety. I make dill pickles. That holds real well in the brine too through the winter, and the different kinds of sauerkraut and the kimchee. Ben here has started to make a fermented hot sauce, and we'll do more of that this coming year. So it's like, there's just no end to it. Once you get into it, you really get excited, and you begin to explore it, and you go, I could do all this stuff, and I could store it in my house, you know, give it to my friend. Great Christmas gifts, you know. Okay, so, you know, and what's really important about stuff like this, and it happens at our farmers market, is people ask me a lot of questions, and it's like, it's a real community sort of sharing of information. And so another way, because I've been an organic farmer for 31 years now, another way I've really developed friendships and a community is I'm a member of the Missouri Organic Association. And every year we have a conference where we get 3 days typically, where different speakers come, and community at large, young, old, big farmers, little farmers, they come together and they're able to exchange information and network. And that's really what's so important. You really learn so much that way, and you make connections that you'll keep over a lifetime. And so we're doing a modified version of that this year in Jefferson City on March 2nd and 3rd. Some of it virtual, some of it live, but please, if you're interested in sharing information in that way and getting connected to people like myself and others with this kind of information, go to our website, Missouri Organic Association, and you'll begin to kind of see the agenda and the speakers. It is going to be done differently this year. There can be some virtual instead of in person, but we'll have a combination of things. There'll be some vendors there that have different kind of equipment and products and seeds, etc. So I just welcome you all to do that. We're all very much concerned about sustainability and regeneration, permaculture. All those topics are coming together right now, because we're all really seeing the need on this is how we save the planet, you might say, and this is how we get a healthy community. So I wish you were in person. I wish I could be in person with you this year, but if you got questions, you come by the farmers market on Saturday. You'll usually catch me there. Thanks. Adios.